If you're going on an Alaskan cruise in 2022, I know that you're probably anxiously awaiting what is happening with the travel requirements, in particular as it relates to Canada. In this video, we're going to share what we know so far about the Government of Canada, what might be coming soon, as well as what one of the cruise lines had to say about potentially skipping Canada this year. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, as I did that intro, well, honestly, I had a little bit of deja vu to 2021. And I honestly hope that we do not have to go there again this year. So I am hopeful that things are going to work out in terms of the travel requirements for coming into Canada, but we will get into all of that information in this video. Now, before I do get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, please do give the video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Okay, let's get started. So just as a little bit of background or as a reminder, last year, although there was about half of an Alaskan cruise season, no cruise ships stopped in Canada, so those Canadian cruise ports of Victoria, BC or Vancouver. And effectively, this had to do with the Canada cruise ship ban. No cruise ships were allowed at that time to stop in Canada due to COVID. And what the cruise lines in Alaska were able to do was to get a temporary exemption from the Passenger Vessel Services Act, allowing cruise ships to leave from Seattle, go up to Alaska, and basically bypass Canada altogether. Now, again, this was something that was temporary. And since that point, Canada has actually lifted its cruise ship ban. And they have said that starting in spring 2022, they will be welcoming cruise ships back to Canadian ports. So while on the surface, this is good, cruise lines and cruise travelers are still waiting to know exactly what those travel requirements are going to be. Now, I should mention that I'm Canadian and I've been following the Government of Canada travel restriction and travel advisories very closely now, especially during the last few months, how it pertains to all international travel, including those Alaska cruises. So Canada has had some of the strictest travel restrictions and mandates, and thankfully they have made an announcement that as of February 28th, things are going to be getting easier, and a lot of those travel restrictions have eased. So while this is not specifically to cruising, this will give you an idea of what to expect and what we know so far. So when it comes to testing, you will need to test either with a PCR or an antigen test to come into Canada. Now, if you take a PCR test, you can do this within 72 hours of traveling to Canada. However, if you do use an antigen test, you will have to do that in the day before coming to Canada. All travelers do need to be fully vaccinated, and this is really quite similar to the way it is on cruise ships. You do not need to have a booster to come into Canada, at least not at this point. If you are coming into Canada with children under the age of 12, there has been a small, good, positive change, and this is for unvaccinated children that are traveling with vaccinated parents. So at that point, children do not need to quarantine anymore. Up until this point, children that were unvaccinated did need to quarantine. I believe it was for 14 days, so they do not need to quarantine if they are traveling with vaccinated parents. When you come into Canada, there is an app. It's called the ArriveCan app. And basically this app is where you input your information for your proof of vaccine. It really isn't so super complicated. I've done it myself. And you just put in your information. You're prompted to do so. And you also take a screenshot or a photo of your proof of vaccine. And you'd also put in your testing information in there as well before you arrive to Canada. Now, at the time that Canada's Transport Minister did announce these changes to the travel requirements beginning on February 28th, he did say that information about cruises would be forthcoming. Unfortunately, that hasn't come yet, and I know people, including cruise lines, are anxiously awaiting that. Now, something to mention that is pretty important is Canada did have a travel advisory against all non-essential travel, and basically this was something that was quite difficult for a lot of Canadians because, of course, it affects travel insurance and some other things as well. So as of February 28th, Canada is now lifting that travel advisory, and they're bringing the travel advisory from a level 3 to a level 2. Now, I'm going to share with you what one cruise line had to say about all of this on their social media channels this past week. But before I do, I want to share with you some confusing information on the Government of Canada's website. So basically, while they do say that they welcome cruises as of spring 2022 and they're working with cruise lines, yada, 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 At the same time, they do continue to advise Canadians against all cruise travel. And this is also on their website. So while they did lift that travel advisory against all travel, they have continued to recommend for Canadians to avoid all forms of cruise travel. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, this really does affect things like travel insurance, etc. So this is really not something good. I don't know why the Canadian government still has this on their website. And I really do hope if they are working through and negotiating with the cruise lines, that they will make a change to this portion as well. Now, what would happen if the government of Canada doesn't share their requirements soon? After all, the first cruise ship to be visiting Canada in Victoria, BC is on April 7th. Well, this could really have very grave consequences for Victoria and Vancouver. And I guess at that point, it can have some for Eastern Canada as well. That's something we didn't talk about in this video. But of course, Eastern Canada is very affected as well. Those are those Canada-New England sailings. Now, while overall the cruise lines haven't really said much about this, we do know that Alaska would obviously like to have a workaround to this, even permanently, if not temporary. And we have recently heard from Carnival's ambassador, John Heald, who did publish a post this week on his large Facebook page. I'm going to share his post on the screen so that you can read it. But basically what he had to say was that if the government of Canada doesn't share requirements soon, the industry will look at alternatives to stopping in Canada. Basically, the workaround for the Passenger Vessel Services Act that it used last year, and it will bypass the country altogether. Now I'm going to speak a little bit from the heart. As a Canadian, this makes me really sad to think that this might happen. And I absolutely understand Alaska's point of view on this. But in terms of for Canadians and for everybody who's traveling, I just think travel is probably more important than ever. And I do think it's important for us to get back to the enjoyments of life, to get back to connecting with one another. And that really does include travel. And I really do hope that the government of Canada, along with lifting some of the mandates that it's had, or even most of the mandates as we move forward, that they do make travel easier for people, that they remove those testing requirements, especially for those who are vaccinated and who are really following all of the steps that the government has asked us to do. Now, I do hope that we'll hear more as the government is lifting those travel restrictions this coming week, but I'd love to hear from you. If you live or work in Victoria or Vancouver and you've heard anything at all, or if you have a thought on this, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you are planning an Alaskan cruise, please let me know your comments and also your questions. What are the things that you want and need to know? Because I'll definitely be doing a follow-up video when we do get those answers, when we have that information for you. I hope that this video was helpful. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would love to have you here within the Life Well Cruise community. Bye for now and happy cruising.